We are now going to discuss section 3. This is the last lecture for week 2. We will be discussing concept of morality. In this particular section, we will discuss criteria of rational behavior, difference between moral instruction, moral training versus moral education. We have already discussed the form of morality. We have discussed the objective theory of good. We have also discussed language of morals. In today's lecture, we will talk about criteria of rational behavior. In order to understand rationality or reasonableness in fuller perspective with its implication on moral human conduct, let us explicate the concept of rationality. What is rationality? What do you mean by rational behavior? Hegelian dialectics of rationality is discussed in terms of 4 criteria, which are logical consistency or coherence. Number 2, generation of universals. Number 3, empirical evidence in support of the generalization or good reason to support the same, and public intelligibility. So these are the 4 criteria according to Hegelian dialectics of rationality, or what you understand by reasonableness or rational behavior. According to first criterion, that is according to logical consistency or coherence, it is necessary that a set of moral beliefs that we have should be internally consistent. For example, it is not rational for me to believe that others should cooperate with me or should take care of my interests if I do not at the same time accept that I must respect others. On the other hand, it will be equally rational or coherent if I believe that others need not respect my interests just as I don't respect their interests. Let me repeat. It will be equally a rational behavior. It will be an equally coherent behavior if I believe that if I do not respect the interests of others, others equally will not respect my interests. So this is according to the first criterion, which is logical consistency or coherence. Then many people in this world live life according to the latter principle, that is, we may not like their values, but we cannot tell them rational or irrational because they show coherence or consistency of behavior. To be called rational, therefore, behavior must be coherent and consistent. According to the second criterion, what is the second criterion? Let me go back. In the second criterion, we have already discussed the first criterion, which is logical consistency or coherence. We talked about how one has to have a rational behavior, one has to be consistent with one's behavior. Then we will be talking about the generation of universals. What does this mean? The second criterion or condition of rational behavior is generation of universal principles. According to this condition, one must be guided by a principle today and another tomorrow unless there are congruent reasons for the same. The idea of rational morality entails that one's behavior should be in accordance with certain general principles, whatever these principles may be. For example, in the society we live in, there are certain general principles, that is respecting the elders. So these are general principles, and we have to behave according to such general principles. That is generation of universal principles. There are certain principles which are universal, and these are the principles which stay the same, which are consistent throughout the society, and which are the same for every members of the society. And these are the principles which one has to follow, irrespective of whether he lives in the end corner of the world. These are principles which people, members of the society should abide by. These principles are honesty, respect of the elders, and so on. So these are general principles, and when we talk about the second criterion or the condition of rational behavior, what you mean by generation of universal principle is principles which are universal for all. According to the third condition of rationality, we should be able to provide empirical evidence or good reasons for what we do. We can say that behavior for which no valid reason can be provided is irrational in the fullest sense. Such behavior cannot be counted as moral. So, what is the third condition for rational behavior? What is the third criterion for rational behavior? The third criterion, according to Hegelian dialectics, is we should be able to provide empirical evidence or good reasons for what we do. For example, if we go and, this is just an example, if I go and slap a person who is just coming in front of me without any rhyme or reason, my behavior can be termed as irrational because I do not have any evidence of why I have slapped that particular person. So this behavior cannot be counted as being rational, it will be counted as being irrational. But if I have an evidence to prove why I have slapped that particular person who was in front of me, the evidence would be, or good reasons would be, I am slapping that person because he have made some derogatory remarks at me. Then this is a valid reason. This is an evidence to show that I have slapped that person who is working in front of me because he or she has passed a derogatory comment about me. Then this is an evidence to show that I have behaved in a rational manner. I have slapped that particular person because I have evidence and I have good reasons or good reason to slap that person because he had made some derogatory remarks about me. Then what is the fourth condition? What is the fourth criterion for rational behavior? According to the fourth condition, our behavior should be publicly intelligible or acceptable. If on the other hand, we tend to behave based on evidence or reasons which are idiosyncratic, they cannot be termed rational. So, when we behave according to what is publicly accepted, then we can say that these are rational behaviors. For example, what is not publicly acceptable would be in the public, you instead of using the public toilets, you do not use the public toilets and you go to behind the bushes to relieve yourself and so on. This is a behavior which is not publicly acceptable or intelligible. That is, you are not using the facility of a public toilet, and this behavior cannot be acceptable publicly. So this may not be termed rational. Your action would be termed rational. Your behavior will be termed rational if your actions are acceptable by the public and it should be publicly intelligible. So that is the fourth criteria. Now let us move on to the subsection of week 2, the last lecture, which is moral instruction, moral training versus moral education. Moral education is not a matter of instruction in certain moral tenets, nor it is a matter of getting to know certain moral values which are objective, fixed and unchangeable. It is rather a process of learning to think for ourselves on moral issues or becoming morally autonomous. So this is moral education. Moral education is not just a matter of instruction, or it is not a matter of getting to know just certain values which are objective, fixed or unchangeable, but it is rather a process of learning to think for ourselves on certain moral issues or becoming morally autonomous. While describing the act of teaching, we use terms like instructions, training, conditioning, or even indoctrination and sometimes education. However, one should remember that each of these terms has a different and specific meaning. They cannot be used interchangeably. In order to distinguish between these terms, let us think of situations where these are appropriately used. According to Peters in 1966, he says, education is concerned with developing autonomy of the individual where people can think and choose on their own. Education also involves development of a cognitive perspective. The other processes like training or instruction do not have any such aim. So according to Peters, education is concerned with developing the autonomy of the individual where people develop their cognitive skills. And education is different from processes like training or instruction. On the other hand, what is training? When we talk about training, training is when we train somebody in certain skills. Say for example, we train somebody to drive a car. We have no consideration for the individual's autonomy. The process of conditioning and indoctrination are still irrelevant to the individual autonomy. In these processes, there is a deliberate attempt to stifle people to question the validity of these systems. In the process of education, however, what is important is the development of knowledge and understanding, a kind of cognitive perspective, and also the development of critical awareness. So, when we talk about education, education is different from training, because training is when we try to train a person, help a person to learn certain skills. Like I said, for example, learning how to drive a car is helping a person learn how to drive a car is training a person in certain skills of motor driving. On the other hand, when we talk about education, education is the process of development of knowledge and understanding, the process of developing certain cognitive skill, and also developing certain critical awareness. In the process of education, however, what is important is the development of knowledge and understanding, and also the development of critical awareness. And to be educated, therefore, means not only the acquisition of autonomy, but also the capacity to use that autonomy effectively. Merely providing freedom of thought does not qualify a person to be educated unless one is adequately informed on the subject. So, education implies an attempt not only to develop pupils' ability to form their own opinion, but also to improve the quality of these opinions. So, when we talk about education, education is to provide knowledge and critical awareness to produce certain cognitive skills. When we talk about training, it involves helping develop a person with regard to certain skills. Like I told you, how helping a person to drive a car is training. And when we talk about instruction, instruction means when you are instructed to do something, when you are told to do something, you have to follow certain instructions which is given by a person. Most of the time this instruction would be a person of a higher authority. So this instruction does not involve what is called autonomy, because you are instructed to do certain things according to what the other person wants you to do. So here is the difference. When we talk about education, there are certain amount of autonomy involved, there is certain amount of development of awareness, of critical thinking involved, cognitive perspectives which are involved. When we talk about instruction, instructions means when you are asked to do something, when you are instructed to do something by others, especially in a lot number of cases the instructions would be by the higher authority. And when we talk about training, training means when you are when you want to develop certain skills, and this skills will not be the skills which you have, but you want to enhance your skill like driving a car or how to cook certain dishes. So these are the differences between what is training, instruction and education. Now let us move on to moral judgments and their criteria. Having examined the nature of morality and moral education, we need to examine an important question of what counts as a moral action. It has two aspects. One, an action cannot be called moral or not moral unless we establish that the individual has acted so on his own or her own free will. It must be an act that the individual is in the full sense responsible for it. So, when we talk about moral action, the important question is what counts as a moral action? Out here we have to establish two facts. The two facts are: one, if the action is acted upon by the person's own good or own free will, and also if the act, because of the act, the person, the individual is taking full sense of responsibility for it. If on the other hand the individual is coerced or compelled to do by forces beyond his or her control, had it been left to his free will, he will probably not perform it. The individual in such a case cannot be held fully responsible for their act. In such a situation, the act will not be termed moral or immoral. So, when we talk about moral action, when we talk about the basis of moral action, we say that there are two aspects involved, that is, a person will act according to his or her own free will. That is, that person, that individual is not being forced to perform those acts. He or she is doing out of his own free will. And he has not been forced or compelled or coerced into doing it. And the other fact is, the other aspect is, the individual takes full responsibility for doing that act. So this will be what is termed as moral action. This leads to a second point of consideration. When the question of praise or blame for certain acts performance comes to examine, we need to see the intention or motive with which the act is performed by the agent. That is, did the person or the individual perform the act because he thought it was right, or did he perform because it would bring advantages to him or her? Let me repeat. When the question of praise or blame for certain acts performed comes to be examined, we must see to the intention or motive which the act is performed by the agent. That is, what is the issues involved in this regard? Did the person or individual perform the act because he thought it was right, or did he perform these actions because it will be advantageous to him or her? Let me give you an example. Let's say an eye specialist wants to organize a camp in a rural village, in a rural area, and this camp organized by the eye specialist would be free for all. So in this particular setup, did the eye specialist perform the act because it was right, because it would be a free camp to the poor and the needy, it would be a free camp to the villagers who will not be able to afford it? Or did he perform it because it will be like an advertisement for him, a free advertisement for him? It would be an advertising, a marketing strategy for him, so that in future people come to him for further consultants or to consult him for further procedure. So these are the two facts which are involved, whether the action is performed because the person feels that it is right or because it brings advantages to him or her. So when an act is performed with a goodwill, it will be termed as good irrespective of the consequences of the act. And when we say that the act has been done without any coercion of his own free will, then the person, intention, motive is there. Let me repeat. When an act is performed with a goodwill, it will be termed as goodwill irrespective of the consequences of the act. That is, for example, if you perform or if you are doing an action without any coercion, that is an action without being forced, or an action because you are doing it out of your own free will, then we will say that your intention, your motive was there to do those actions. But however, if you do any action without any free will, if you are doing any action because you are forced to do it, then this your intention would not be out of goodwill, but it is because you have been forced to do it. Now, before we conclude this session, let me give you an exercise. Let me give you a question to ponder upon, that is to think upon, and this question will help you to exercise and to help you to recollect what you have done in this week 2. I have completed in this week 2 section 1 and 2. We have talked about moral consciousness, we have talked about moral education, religious education. Then we have talked about objective theory of good, language of morals. We have talked about criteria of rational behavior, and we have also talked about differences between moral training, instructions and education, and also we have talked about moral judgment and their criteria. So this is a question for all of you learners. Have you ever told a lie or done something to save others? So this is a question for you to ponder upon, and please think about this particular exercise, this particular question. Have you ever told a lie or done anything to save others? So if you can relate to this question, you will also be able to relate to the topics which were covered, like rational behavior. You will be able to relate to topics like the criteria for rational behavior. Then you would also be able to talk about, think about the topic which were covered for moral judgment and so on. So dear learners, I have completed week 2, section 1, 2 and 3. I hope you have enjoyed and you have got something out of week 2. Thank you so much.